Hello, friends. This is Dr. Jonathan Strecker, longtime independent school educator, current head of school, and author of Emergence: How Modern Convenience is Dumbing Down Our Children and What Parents and Schools Can Do About It. As we begin the start of another wonderful school year, I thought I'd take a moment to talk to parents or students about what they can do to maximize their potential this year. And we're going to do it from the perspective of three elements. One, what are the basic needs that a human requires to become successful in life? Two, what are the attributes and intelligences one must maximize to give themselves the best chance to reach their full potential? And finally, what does it mean to be wise in all of those areas? So I hope you enjoy the conversation today, and hopefully it helps you start the year on a positive note. Well, anytime we discuss needs, I think it's always best to start with Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So Maslow believed that there were 5 needs that one needed to satisfy to be able to reach full actualization. It starts with the physiological needs. So when you think about your family, these are the things I want you to think about as being the most basic needs that you have to fulfill to be able to reach the next level, because one has to be satisfied, or Maslow believed one has to be satisfied before you can reach the next level of need. So it starts with physiological needs. This is food, water, the air you breathe. So if you are going without, or you're living in a difficult situation where the air is not clean, try to find ways to make sure you're getting the proper nutrition, proper food, clean water, clean air to breathe. And as a result of that, your physiological needs, the things your body needs, the basics, are there to satisfy those. Second are safety needs. And this is where things get a little more difficult in schools. Safety is much more than just physical safety. It's also emotional safety. It's also intellectual safety. The safety that needs to be provided to you to ensure protection, security, and well-being, your health, and even for parents, your financial security. Because if you are going without, that makes it very difficult to reach the higher levels of needs. Now, where you might see this transition into school is if your child comes home and talks about not feeling safe, feeling bullied, either physically or emotionally bullied, feeling unaccepted by teachers where they're dismissive of your child. So these are all important elements for your child to feel safe. There is a caveat to this. Being challenged does not mean your child is not safe. So a teacher may push your child to do better, have higher expectations, and your child may say to you, "But I don't feel safe." Well, there's a difference between being challenged and disciplined, both of which you need, and also feeling nurtured and safe as part of the process. So make sure you think about all 4 of those words: challenged, disciplined, and safe and nurturing. You need all 4 to be accepted. So if your child is saying, "I don't feel safe," but they're missing the point of their own potential growth, that's something you'll need to discuss with your child. The next level of need after physiological needs and safety needs are love and belonging. And this is both a duality for you at home, where they need to feel love and part of a family, with your own set of core values and cultural acceptances, but also at school. They need to feel loved and they need to feel like they belong. So if your child ever says, "I just feel like I'm all alone, I feel isolated," I highly encourage you to reach out to the school. This isn't something where you just say, "Well, just put your head down and study and get your grades and forget about it." Well, that statement, while promoting, is also detrimental, because if the child doesn't feel like they belong as part of at least a small community within their schools, it's a detriment to them, and they can't get past that to reach their highest levels, which are the next 2 levels of development. And the next one is esteem. where self-confidence and independence and respect are all developed. So it's important that they have the love and belonging, because that will be required, because once you feel like you're part of something greater than yourself, that is where self-confidence is born in. That is where independence is derived. And it's a nice balance between trying to advance yourself, but also simultaneously advancing the culture you are in. And so that's why love and belonging and esteem needs are equally both important. And then the last level of needs is really heightening your full potential. It's something called self-actualization. It represents an internal feeling of being able to accomplish anything you set your mind to, and most importantly, at the highest level. So this is something you want to think about when your child is headed off to school. It's an examination of what is happening in the home and an examination of the environment you are sending your child to at school. These are both important parts, and this is something that I pay close attention to when our children start school at my school here in Pennsylvania. The second layer of success is surrounded by 5 intelligences. Sometimes they're called attributes. I like to think of them as intelligences. From a school perspective, the most obvious is intellectual development. You send your child to school to learn math and science and English and history. They should be receiving art and athletics and a variety of electives that they can choose to help develop their passions. So intellectual development in and of itself is almost a prerequisite. It is what we are required as schools to do. However, good schools manage that. Great schools make sure that your child gets the other 4 intelligences hit on as part of the full curriculum. The second intelligence is social intelligence. Social intelligence represents one of the more important elements of one's success. It talks about socialization, relationship building, social responsibility, social awareness, and social competence. How to navigate different cultures at different times. It is the elements of social understanding that allow one to communicate across different avenues, different environments, and ultimately build up something called social capital. When you become highly skilled at social competence, what happens is you begin to be seen as a leader within your school, within your environment, within your job, whatever it might be. But one's social intelligence is very important. So if your child says, listen, I just want to be quiet, I just want to sit in the back of the classroom, just know they're missing out on a whole intelligence that is essential to their overall success. The third level of intelligence you want to focus on as a family and for your child is emotional intelligence. We all go through a developmental process of experience things that cause anxiousness, ill will feelings, and these are difficult. And what happens is you get a sensation, it moves into your amygdala, and then you have to learn over time through your neocortex, your higher brain functions, to control, to suppress those elements of negative emotion. So I hear all the time from parents when I say, well, what are you hoping for your child? I just want them to be healthy and happy and learn. And happiness is one of those elements. So if your child is coming home every day and they're upset, you have to really dig in to figure out what is causing that emotional pushback. Is it something that can be fixed at the school? Like, for example, are they being bullied socially and that's causing it? Or do they just have a natural proclivity for being negative? And if that's such, what's happening is in their brain, that negative emotion is firing on a regular basis, and they have to retrain their brain to think of things from a positive perspective. This is not just for your children. This can be applied to you as parents as well. So it's always good when you're thinking about how one responds or how you are yourself responding. Is it from a positive perspective, an optimistic perspective, or from a negative perspective? Because if negative maintains itself for too long, it actually moves itself into a depressive state. The fourth intelligence is ethical intelligence. Now, most people think of this as just doing right or wrong. And yeah, there are certainly many situations that there is a right thing to do and a wrong thing to do. However, what normally happens is there's a conflict. There is something that comes up that is causing a dilemma. Ethical intelligence is the ability to consider both sides of an argument, think it through logically, and then try to apply the best logic you can to make an ethical decision. And I will go into greater detail, or if you decide to purchase my book, this is one of the more interesting of the 5 intelligences because it's one of the least thought of. And it's only just recently that people have started to recognize it as its own independent intelligence. But I can promise you, through civil conversations, through having conversations that prove to be difficult, that need to be weighted, and you have to bring facts, it is most definitely the type of intelligence, if you can master, it leads highly to leadership qualities. And the 5th intelligence is something I like to refer to as physical intelligence. It's one's natural ability. So if we think of intellectual intelligence, I'm sure you've heard of IQ scores, and that is your natural ability to understand things intellectually. And then you still have to work to better yourself. Well, physical intelligence is a lot like this. So if I wanted to become a basketball player or an athlete, well, there are physical intelligences, baseline natural capabilities that can lend itself to doing that. LeBron James is just truly a physical phenom. He was born with height. He was born with speed. It doesn't mean he didn't have to work. He could have let all that go to waste, but he never did. He has worked, and quite honestly, he has prolonged his ability to stay in the NBA. And if nothing else, you have to appreciate his ability to stay active and successful as long as he has. He is the epitome, in my mind, of a person who had natural ability and took it to its highest level. Well, maybe you or your child doesn't have the height, the speed, the strength that somebody like LeBron James doesn't have, but it doesn't mean you can't maximize your own potential in your physical health. And that requires 3 elements, 3 things I want you to think about when it comes to maximizing your child's success at school. You have sleep. You need to look up, based on age, how much sleep your child needs. It doesn't mean when they go to their room. You've got to make sure they're getting the required sleep, because if you send them into their room with an iPad, a TV, a computer, a cell phone, there's a high likelihood that that addiction is going to keep them up at night. And it may not be when they fall asleep, but they may wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning and be like, oh, let me check my Instagram or something. And it's a huge detriment. You have to get the required sleep so your brain grows to its max capacity. The next is nutrition. What are they eating? Do you have a healthy meal at home? At school, we take great pride and make sure that our sugars are limited, carbohydrates are limited, fats are limited, and we want them to have meals that are produced in-house every single day. And our kitchen staff does an amazing job of making sure that happens. So our kids, we know, are getting a healthy food at the school. If you can replicate that at home, that is a huge plus. It's a huge separator. And then finally, with sleep and nutrition, it's physical exercise. And you want to make sure not only is your child getting plenty of activity at school, recesses, and we have recess K through 8 at my school. They're also getting PE. They're also getting outside time within their classes. We live in a very naturalistic environment. So we like to be outside a lot. That is incredibly healthy. But when they come home, even if they're not an athlete, they've got to do something that physically engages them every single day. And you can see that in how much weight they're carrying, their demeanor, how well their brain is working. All of those are symptoms of being healthy or unhealthy. Now, the most important part of these 5 intelligences for you as a parent is they're self-reinforcing. This is something I discovered in my dissertation. When you increase a person's social skills, it has a positive correlation to intellectual development. It has a positive correlation to their emotional stability. It has positive correlation to their ethical understanding and a positive correlation to their physical health. No matter which one you improve, the other 4 are positively impacted. However, the converse is true. If one starts to move into decline, it will start to have a negative impact on the other 4. And so it's not just becoming good at one thing. If Einstein was antisocial, was emotionally fragile, was ethically unsound, or physically unhealthy, he would have never reached the pinnacle of his intelligence that we all benefit from today. So just give that some thought. So when you think about evaluating your child's experience at home and at school, think about it from the perspective of, okay, let me examine my child across these 5 intelligences and how are they doing. So the next step is, how do you truly evaluate each one of those intelligences across the spectrum that is meaningful? So you can say, you're intellectually wise, you're socially wise, you're emotionally wise. What does wisdom mean? Well, for this, I like to use Bloom's taxonomy. In Bloom's taxonomy, there are 6 levels, and it starts with the most basic, and it works you up towards wisdom. And this is how you know you have reached a level of wisdom where truly you are at the upper edge of an understanding. Those 6 levels are remembering, understanding, being able to apply that information, using it to analyze yourself as you're using it. Then you can evaluate your outcomes and ultimately create something new and novel, either for yourself or for the world. So instead of using intellect, where most people apply this information, I'm going to use our physical intelligence because it's the one that is most obvious when you go through the process. So when I say remember, so as I told you, getting proper sleep, eating healthy through nutrition, and then getting enough exercise, that is something that I can present to a person and they can remember that. Like, oh, okay, those 3 elements, that will make me healthy. But to understand it, that is something different. That means, okay, why is sleep important? Well, sleep is important because that is when your brain restructures itself and the pathways grow more strongly. Nutrition is what you put into your body, the vitamins, the minerals, the health that goes into keeping a healthy body and brain. And then exercise actually gets you to tear down your muscle fibers to make you stronger as a result of that. It is the breakdown. So when you're working out, it's not building muscle, it's tearing down muscle. And as it repairs itself through the nutrition and sleep you get, it actually gets stronger. And that is the benefit. That is a level of understanding. Then the third, which I find is the most difficult, is applying it. Okay, so now you know what it is. You know why it's important. The question is, can you do it? Can you get up off the couch and go work out? Do you go to the refrigerator and eat something healthy? Do you get the required sleep, or are you binging a show and you're going to stay up and say, well, I'll just get 5 hours of sleep tonight, get to work the next day, not a problem. Well, all of those, that application process is really important. And then as you apply as you take the time to make yourself successful in this endeavor physically. You have to analyze how it's going. And what I mean by this is you begin to compare and contrast who you were prior to the changes you've made, and then also the things that you are seeing now, the benefits. So you're differentiating before and after. You're considering the benefits of what you're doing. The fifth level is evaluating. And what I mean by this is now you're evaluating based on the goals that you set for yourself physically. Where do you want to be? Was there a certain weight you wanted to reach? Was there a certain amount of sleep you wanted to get? What does your meal planning look like? And you're evaluating your own ability to do what you've applied and analyzing what that looks like. And finally, after all that work, maybe what it is you want to consider for yourself and your child is, are you creating something particular to them? This is really important. Sure, Einstein created relativity. LeBron James created an incredible career. It doesn't always have to be tied with some universal success. It can be your success. I have a friend named Tommy Migrant who faced incredible difficulties around his weight, and he started doing the P90X program. And he was so dedicated, and he created such a strong plan for himself. And this is something I highlight in my book. Tommy reached the pinnacle of health, but he truly is an inspiration physically through the workings of Tony Horton, who started the P90X program. But he went through all 6 of those levels to create something for himself and, quite honestly, create a very successful life after that. So he's my physical intelligence inspiration that I use. It's August, and you are probably going to watch your child walk out the front door to walk to school. Maybe you drive them to school. Maybe they hop on a bus. Whatever it is, they're getting ready to walk into a potential environment of success. The question is, are they going to take full advantage of what school has to offer? And this can be all the way from kindergarten all the way through college. It really doesn't matter. When you begin to analyze your opportunities along different functions, you begin to understand how you can benefit yourself holistically as part of this plan. So one thing I love to do, and I get to do this every single day, is I get to greet the children at the beginning of every day as they walk into school. And I get to just see them as they depart school every day at dismissal. And because I'm in a K-8 school, you can imagine the little kindergartners and first graders coming up and they want to give me fist bumps. But watching them walk in with different attitudes, different excitement, the things they tell me, the one thing I take most pride in is just stopping to listen to their excitement, or if they come up with a complaint, trying to help them turn their mindset around so when they walk into the school, they can get the best out of that day. I know not every day is going to be great. Not every day is going to be perfect, but with the right mindset, you can change your life for the better. I hope this video has helped you. If you find any sort of help out of this, I ask you to like and subscribe as I try to get the message out to parents. And I will be doing another video shortly to teachers so that they understand the important role they play along these same lines of meeting the needs of a child, helping them develop their 5 intelligences, and then, of course, what does it mean to reach true wisdom across the spectrum at each developmental grade level? Thank you.